Hi everyone, welcome to number two in the Business Bold in Business and Life podcast. There is my special guest, Simon Ekin, also known as Si, because he lives in South Africa. Welcome to the show, mate. How you doing?
Thanks, Erkan. I suggested we just get straight into it because I was late again because I keep getting the time zones mixed up. I think
But your message
Europe
actually
was.
said, let's call it 4 o'clock. It's 3 o'clock my time. So you had it. You had it. You had it in the
I mean,
bag. Was it
I've come
you?
onto this really intelligent podcast, run by a really together guy, intelligent, like no problem. And I just about the third time I've like got the time wrong, but I'm here.
Yes, welcome. Welcome. So
Thank you.
So let's introduce you to the audience. So let's tell us a bit about yourself. You've got some honestly some very impressive stories, some very amazing achievements. Just some of these you do, I just don't know how. But anyway, far away. What do you want to say about yourself? Why should people listen to you?
Thank you. And I will just say that how we met was in 1997. In fact, we did a course together, and and it was my 30th birthday, and we met each other, and I don't think you and I would ever have connected. You were a North London Cypriot fucking geezer. Are we allowed to swear or not? Would you rather we didn't?
I'm not going to edit it out.
And I was just basically a middle class kind of posh lad, and and I was wearing these. Remember those? How can we forget those bowling
Bowling
shoes?
shoes, like red and green or something, weren't they?
Red, green, and blue, and yellow. And we hit it off, man. And here we
You're like
are.
one of those fucked up Volkswagen Polos that used to have all the different color panels on them. And back then, you were a photographer.
I was a photographer.
I mean, some people do anything to get women naked.
It was the illustrious Maidenhead advertiser. And yeah, so just in a nutshell, I am in my late 50s. I very seldom ever give my age because it's a funny little phenomenon, which is I've noticed, I've been doing it for the last couple of years, is that when I give my age, I become the age that I am. Yet honestly, I feel like a 27-year-old. I feel athletic. I mean, being athletic is another thing, but it's a weird thing. And people go a little bit crazy, like, you have to tell me your age. But I think a lot of it is about kind of boxing, oh, you're that age, therefore I speak to you like that. So that's been quite funny, interesting for me. But in essence, my kind of highlights and lowlights or highlights are if I just go do it quick linear. I was born in the UK. My dad was a clergyman, and we moved to Durban in South Africa for 7 years, moved back to England, finished off my schooling there. My whole life has been a series of what am I gonna do next? And if these things just kind of
What
pop
are you
up.
going on that note? What are you going to? No, we'll get to that in a minute. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was like at school going, fuck, like everyone knows what they're doing. I thought, of course they didn't. Yeah, going to university or this or that. And I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And I thought, I'll join the army. Because career prospects were good and this and that and the other. And it was a time when, it looked good on your CV, get to travel. So I was in the army, in the British Army for 5.5 years. Went to Jordan, Norway, Cyprus, I was stationed in Cyprus, yeah, and other places, Kenya. And then I finished that and did a bicycle ride from Cape Town back to the UK, which is went it through 14 months, 22 countries, 13,000 kilometers, got 3 attacks of malaria. We were actually there around the time of the genocide in Rwanda, which was just so scary. And then finished that, came back and studied photojournalism, regional and national press photography. And then when Erkan and I met, and I think, well, certainly for me, my career trajectory completely changed into the world of personal development, coaching, training, speaking. I remember sitting in this course and going, wow, thank you. I got some tools now. So that was how it started. And then the last thing I'll say just for now is I thought I'll be a coach, and because really coaching is quite simple. It's not always easy, but like, where are you now? Where do you want to be? And what is there to do to get there? Which I've always liked as a simple definition. And then, yeah, there'll be more to talk about what I've been doing since then.
Oh, well, you've forgotten one big element, I'd say, is the Art of Courage book. Your author.
Yeah.
So your main theme for quite some time has been about discovering and evolving this notion of courage and how it contributes to one's life, and where do we, if you like, don't have courage, where we stop, where fear takes over, where the old patterns, although we can distinguish them as patterns when we look back at them, are not patterns. They're just, that's the way the world is, and then we work on it to distinguish those things. I mean, how does putting I mean, we're obviously creating content and we're on the record on this video. We can be, people can go love it, you can be criticized, people can hate you, whatever. But when you write it, there's a different, I know there's still was it beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but when someone's reading someone's book, they are creating that experience for themselves in a way that maybe no other medium does, I guess. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, I think I do want to say, okay, so I said like the bit up until when Erkan and I met, and then my life changed.
But it did for both of us, not necessarily
No,
because of each other, maybe in spite of each other as well.
I really did. You have been genuinely a massive impact positively on my life in many, many ways. We've had quite a journey. So, but yeah, I hold you. I wouldn't want to get off this call without saying it's very close to my heart. You're a very, very dear friend, and I've learned a tremendous amount about you. And I think it's also, I am. You're a very switched on businessman. I think you've been brought up in that kind of immigrant culture. Correct me if I'm wrong. Your dad coming from North Cyprus, and and the dry cleaning business, and you've always got some like you live in the world of business. I think it was the patter that you were brought up in, the conversation around the dining room table, if that's what you had, and it's so interesting to when I converse with you, just you get it. I didn't come from a business background. I've learned as I've gone. For me, business is about stories and how you can create new realities and so on and so forth. But you've really got it in your DNA, I think. So I started coaching, and then I was like, I can coach everyone, mums and this and that and sports people. And then I had a coach, and she said, "No, you're going to have to be specific." And then I remember her coming into my room one day and going, "I got it. You're going to coach entrepreneurs," because it was the time of the dot-com kind of boom, and it was incredible. I'd go to people and they'd say, "I'm a coach," and they go, "What, rugby, cricket?" And I go, "Well, actually, no, performance and leadership." And they're like, "What? How does it work?" And I say, "You're here. You want to be here. Here's the journey, and there's stuff that happens along. How much do you charge?" And it was amazing. It was like, I mean, it sounds awful to say it, but it was like printing money or shooting fish in a barrel. I was like, God, people pay me for this.
I remember a couple of things it reminds of. I was at an airport once, and so I said to her, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm a coach." She goes, "You drive a coach?" I went, "Yeah." I just thought, it's like, I'm not getting into this at an airport. It's so transitional, liminal. I just thought, yeah, I'll just walk away and he thinks I drive a coach. But I remember when I was coaching, I coached you more than one occasion, as in period of time. And there was
Yeah.
one occasion I think I got you to walk around with £500 in your pocket. Do you remember, to have this breakthrough around what it like to walk around with a wad in your pocket? And I think I did this exercise with is like give money away. Like be in the flow of money. Don't be so. And I think you gave 500 quid to a homeless person. Is that right?
Crack
I went,
addict.
no, I didn't mean that.
No, it wasn't 500. It was actually eight. I think it was £80.
Oh,
And
I've embellished that a little bit then, haven't I?
okay, well, let's go with 500.
It
You
sounds
never
far
let the
better
truth,
for the
you know,
purpose of entertainment.
you never let the truth get in the way of a good story. But yeah, I was like, okay, oh, fine, I'll do it. Because it was a Victoria station. I was looking up at the thing, and I heard this woman go, "Oh, my son," and and I was like, "Oh." And then 2 weeks later, same spot, looking at the thing, and I heard the woman, and she said exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And there was a timeline to it, so I knew she was lying. I said,
Yeah.
"Hang on a second, I get it."
Oh,
And
David,
she,
I gave you
and
500, I mean, 80 quid last time.
she turned on
So,
me.
so we've been talking on and off. I mean, so audience, Si and I have known each other since January 97. We've been in and out of each other's lives. So I was at my best man, did the best man speech on the day. And we've been very, and I was at your wedding, you was at my wedding. So you've been a a very special part of my life, right? Now enough, I don't know, tossing each other off, for want of a better word.
I was thinking that as well. Enough about me and Erkan, more about me and Erkan.
No, I've finished talking about me. You can talk about me now. It's one of my friend Tony does that a lot. He says, "Oh, you can talk about me now." Look, sometimes people say, "Oh, you're afraid." And I'm like, I don't perceive fear as a regular experience. I mean, there's some, and I think it's not that we're not afraid. It's just that we're more used to just getting things done and over. It's like going over the bumps and not feeling them as much, But this notion of courage, we was talking about courage, and I was, when you coach someone, or not a coach necessarily, but you give someone input, and you kind of go, so where am I being stopped in life? Right? Like if you really lifted the lid unrecognizably for yourself, where could life end up? And I don't think I live like that. Now, some people look at me and go, "Mate, you're living the dream. You're living in Cyprus. You go to the beach every day. You ride bike." But the constant need to, get clients and keep clients and service clients. It's not a business. It's not like it's churning out and giving you stability. You've got to constantly generate that. At the level I'm playing the game. I'm sure there's coaching people and coaching companies that have, I don't know, different experience, right? And I don't think I've played full out in a long time. Like really push my. So maybe that's why I'm not feeling the fear. Is because I'm within my limits. I'm doing all right, but that doesn't mean I'm stretching myself or achieving what's possible. I just get that, just sharing it with you, sharing it with the audience. It's like we can also get complacent inside. Your level might be here, and yes, a lot of other people might be there that you can perceive. And there's people that are way. I mean, like for example, you've done what, 1,000 talks impromptu on the tube in a high street. I don't know. You tell us more about that. Right? And Si would just get up, talk to the audience, or they're not an audience, are they? The victims, maybe, and engage them in whatever subject you was working on. I think courage has been the main theme. And people have walked away with an incredible insight. Just because I don't think I could do that. I mean, I know I could do it, like intellectually, but to just get up and engage people cold with no permission, no agreement, and go. I mean, tell me when you first came up with this idea, and how did you climatize that? Because I imagine now to do that wouldn't be a big stretch. Now, some people would rather die than do that. If that's you, take note. And some of you are already doing that, and there's another level of that, whatever that look like. Sorry, there's a question in there
Yeah,
somewhere. How do you
great,
develop
thanks.
your
And
concept of courage? Sorry,
yeah, thanks. You said something to me. It was about a month ago, and you said, what's going on with you and courage, but you and courage, because you said to me, you know enough, you know more about it than most people, and you've written a book, and like what's going on, because I was kind of going through a blocked stage in my business. It wasn't kicking off and so on. And and so I'll go back to where it started, but I don't want to leave this call without saying this. When I wrote this book called The Art of Courage, it was initially called, Overcoming Your Fears or something like that. I remember writing it as I was going through the writing of it, and it's brutal to write a book. It's just so hard because it's about actually the stuff that you leave out, not the stuff you put in. And I remember this voice in my body somewhere saying, "Are you sure you want to do this? Because this is not what you think it is." And I've never forgotten that. And I didn't really know what it meant, but I think I'm, whatever, to 14, 15 years after writing it, I think I'm starting to get it. That fear is so deep and so multi-layered and multifaceted and subtle. It's a bit like herding cats or or you know those games with mercury, and you go, and it goes, and so I'm even, now at my age and stage, and I'm aghast at how fear just can creep up out of nowhere and just like that. So I just want to put that caveat. I don't think fear is always going to be there. And what I've learned is that it's such a beautifully available resource to be alchemized, if you like, into, because fear is about scarcity and limitation and less than and that. Whereas, so what's the opposite of fear? Love, abundance, opportunity, uh, making things happen, creativity. And what's the bridge, as I see it, from fear to love is the bridge of courage. So courage comes from the Latin courage, meaning movement from the heart. Get in your heart and move from your heart. So yeah, I mean, my kind of where the lights came on for me was in 1999, shortly after we met, and it was late one night in Brixton, Main Road, 11 o'clock on a Friday night, to be specific. High. Well, this is the whole weekend, and bands were playing, people were puking up on the pavement, and police sirens rolling, and all of that scene. And then the bus pulled up, and I was literally going two miles up the road, and I got onto the bus. It was completely full. And it took me a few seconds to go, what's going on here? And I realized it was completely and utterly silent. And it was a moment in time. And then I noticed these two conversations started. And what I now see as, let's call it a conversation of the heart, the spirit, the gut, and the conversation of the mind. And the conversation went like this. Really quiet in here. I wonder why people are being so quiet. Well, when I do something, I don't know, sing a song, make a speech. So I'll make a speech. Yeah. And then I heard this other voice here, which was my mother's voice. And this is what my mother sounds like. Darling, don't be ridiculous. You'll only embarrass yourself. And what will people think?
Wow.
And the moment I heard that, I saw in the crosshairs of my life how much of my love, my contribution I've given away with that single question, what will people think? And then I had this wrangle, and I got up and I made a speech, and it was an incredible experience. And it kind of moved energetically, almost like a morgue, to a stand-up comedy show. I spoke about things that I don't even know to this day where they came from. I call it God's magical teleprompter. Like when you stand up and you breathe and you look around and you create connection with people, the words just flow. I'm sure you've had that experience as well, right? And so yeah, that started it off, and then I and then I had an incident at the end of that bus ride, which kind of sealed the whole thing. And so I gave the speech, and it was terrifying and exhilarating, and people
How
started
long?
asking
I
questions.
mean, can you gauge how long you spoke for? Was it like 2 or 3 minutes? Was it because you're on a
It
bus
was
moving and
Yeah, it was probably 4 or 5 minutes, I would think.
wow, that's quite a
Mm. I was in the process of moving back to South Africa. I was passionate about South Africa. I'd been on the
is that what you spoke about?
Yeah, I spoke about Nelson Mandela. I mean, I'm paraphrasing it a bit because it is a great story, but it is actually about a 15-minute story. But in essence, I got up and I said, why are we all so quiet? Let me do your speech. I'm not going to sing about Jesus and ask for money, and I'm not on day release from an institution. Let me just share what's in my mind. People were like, there was just no discernible change. And I remember just wanting to just run away. And I said, just stay, just stay, just stay. And I spoke about South Africa because I was in the process of going back to South Africa because of the work that we'd done in the forum in that course. And then so I just spoke about these things that mattered to me. And I remember the energy shifted when I was like, nothing's happening here. People are like, and I and in my mind, and I said, something message came to my mind. Speak about Nelson Mandela. And I'm like, fuck. So I said, Nelson Mandela, ladies and gentlemen. And I was like, I don't know what the fuck I was going to say next. I said, think about him. What's the difference between him, you, and me? Nothing. He just had a commitment and he didn't give up and he kept fucking going. And I said, we start a gym program, we start a savings thing, it doesn't work, we move on. And I saw this woman go in the ribs of I assume, boyfriend. And then this energy started to move. And I just spoke about these things that just mattered to me about community, connection, how we'd become so disconnected. And if we were 7-year-olds on this bus, we'd be having an absolute riot,
And what kind of very, overly positive, like really affirming responses have you had? I mean, like what have people said to you as they leave or getting off the bus? Or I know you've done it in squares and in the street, and you've done it in all sorts of places. What's the most thing? What's the most as an example? What are the most encouraging things you've heard people say?
Yeah, I mean, just to finish that story, I finished my thing and like, wow, it's going amazing, fantastic. And I see this guy at the back end of the bus. It's a kind of on here, off there, and he's a scary looking dude. He's about 6'5", shaven head, donkey jacket on. And as I get closer, he's got a scar down his right cheek, and I see he's got a tattoo here. And as I get closer, I see it's a perforated line, and underneath it says in big capital letters, "Cut here."
Wow.
Fuck. Yeah, really, it was. Wow. I mean, I tell the story now, like, hey, yeah, but actually, it was really terrifying. And because I was like, what the fuck is going to happen next? And why did great, I've had my little moment in the sun, like, and now this is real life. And I remember hearing that someone had been stabbed on the very same late night Brixton bus of the route that I was on. And I walked towards this guy, and as I got in closer, he leaned into me, and I could smell the garlic and the cigarettes on his breath and the booze. Excuse me a second, sweetheart. I'm on a podcast.
I'm going to leave that in.
Yeah, I do. No, you do leave it in. Much better. And I walking towards him, and he comes up really close to me, and he says and these words completely changed my life, and I've never forgotten it. He said, mate, there's a lot of people are gonna think you're fucking mad, but don't ever stop what you're doing. All right, go on and fuck off.
All right, now, fuck off.
And it was incredible, and I remember getting off that bus and going, I got it. This is it. This is the work. Courage, And it's been tough, I mean, it sounds like, whoa, there we go, and I then went through a few false starts of doing them here and there and at the mall and on the bus and so on and so forth. And then I came back to South Africa a few years later, 5 or so years later after that. And I went into a coffee shop, and there was a little notice saying, write your book in 90 days. And my ex-wife was in the process of leaving medicine. She was talking about writing a book. I gave her the thing. I forgot about it. 90 days later, she says, I've written my book. What are you going to do? I was like,
good old Marie.
Yeah, she was like that, and is like that. And I knew exactly what I was going to do. I was going to do 90 days of one talk a day, consecutive, off we go. And so I spoke at gyms, trains, saunas, all sorts. But I think
just before you open your mouth and you're about to, what do you take a gulp? Do you kind of deep breath? I mean, how do you kind of just jump?
Yeah, it's a breath. It's a 3, 2, 1, jump out
pull the band-aid off.
Yeah, exactly. And I I did it once, twice, three, and I've done it over 1,000 times, and I've never been punched or slapped with a wet fish or told I remember one guy saying to me, like, please, like, God, it's just exhausting hearing you speak. It was a Sunday at a supermarket, like, oh, please. Like, and I said, oh, no, I get it, man. Sorry, no, the energy was all off. Thanks for being back, But the most common conversation was a silent. I say was because I haven't done them for a while. It was a silent conversation. People would come up to me and go, and I'd say, "You got what you need? You know what you're going to do? Good luck."
Yeah.
And people came up to me. I remember one guy on a plane said, "Thank you for your speech. Thanks for for taking a leap, because you've made me realize I was actually on my way home to divorce my wife, and you've made me stop and think, hang on a second, like, what am I responsible for? What's the courageous thing to say, you know? But most of which the result of what I did, I'll never know about, you know?
Well,
But I do want to share
isn't
this
that
briefly as well. Yeah, go on.
sorry, sorry. Isn't that a bit like that's well, that's kind of in the context of standing up and speaking to strangers, that's kind of none of your business, is it? Because it's going to ripple off and it goes where it goes. And but
Right.
even where I don't know, we're doing a talk or a seminar and there's a clear audience and they're there for that, you still never really know. You don't know for sure what that difference is, and then people do share things, obviously. But it's kind of like it goes out there, and I think if we're all sending out those kind of good intentions and vibes to influence and impact people's lives for the better, well, that can only be a good thing.
Yeah, I coined the term the wake, you know,
Mm,
like a boat with a wake. You know, you're going on, you're doing your thing, but you never know what's happening a kilometer, or, you know, if it's a big boat, you know, 10 kilometers back there, you know.
mm.
Uh, so yeah, I had so many conversations with people and learned so much. And I feel like, yeah, I just want to share one. This was a really powerful insight for me, which changed a lot. You know, one's parents. You know, and the challenges of parents, dead or alive. I mean, both our dads have died. You know, even from the grave, it can be a challenge, right? A Buddhist monk said to me once, "If you ever think you're transformed, go spend the weekend with your parents."
That's for sure. That is actually quite a good test, isn't it? I want to change the tone
Go.
and subject a bit. So that was lovely
On.
start. Thank you. Appreciate it. Really lovely. Straight in, warm, beautiful. I want to maybe get a bit more tricky because this is obviously business, bold in business, bold in life. And I'm distinguishing, I guess, between the personal, private in our lives and our whatever our business activities are, whether it's entrepreneurship, run a business, whether we're like we're working a corporate, or it's like what are we doing in business to keep our. And I think
Yep.
one of the things that I'd like to kind of discuss also the macro agendas and the macro, whether it's economy, economics, world events, all the way down to how they impact us on the shore, globally, sorry, locally in our lives. What are you thinking about when you look out at the world at the moment? I mean, what is standing out for you? What are you kind of, whether it's encouraging you or just kind of, I don't know, deep despair, maybe, I don't know, whatever you'd like to say about the bigger picture.
Yeah, such a good question. I am. I mean, you and I had what I would experience as a bit of a fallout, didn't we? You know, during COVID. I mean,
When you say
you
had,
know,
I'd say having.
say again,
When you say had, I think you say having.
we are having a bit of
Well,
a fallout.
during the COVID year, I think there was a lot of uh, uh,
Polarity or
but yeah, polarity. Different on people's political awareness, global events awareness, people watching and, if you like, adhering to the mainstream narratives, and then people doing their own independent. I think at that point I became, for the record, I became the desire to make that difference and get people to kind of like, oh, I get it now. This is happening. A lot of the time it wasn't that experience. It was like people kind of like, even during COVID, I was getting people just look me back and go, and I think that there was a point maybe 18 months ago, 2 years ago, just despair, just thought, you know what, I'm done. And that's why I kind of stopped creating content, because I thought what I have to say now, I've said. And coming back to do the show, one of the things that I kind of said in a little piece I did to camera, which I think I mentioned you as well, was I don't know what I want to come in and say now. I'm going to work with my guests, with the audience, to kind of work out how involved do we get with the global? How do we mitigate it on the local? How do we take care of ourselves and the people in our lives? And how do we move on and our own challenges? Because that's what I think bold, which is not such a different context than courage. Where can we be bold? Where can we say what there is to say? Where can we do what there is to do? And how much of that do we do? in proportion to our given abilities, resources, time, because you still got to chop wood, carry water. There's still a lot to do. So I don't know if I diluted the question, but when you look out at the world and you look at it from the global to the local, what would you like to say about it? What do you think people need to be thinking about or looking at?
Yeah, I do want to say, I just want to say something about you. I'm full of admiration. I mean, in my world, how you've been and the research that you've done on, let's just some of the, big pharma, fake news, all of that stuff. You've, I think, been extremely brave for decades, and you've been met with a lot of resistance from the vast majority of people, I would imagine, which is interesting. And why is that? And so I just want to put that piece in, and also to acknowledge you for not, and there's actually a Turkish proverb, which is no matter how far you've gone down a wrong track, turn back. I suspect that if you had continued on that, in my experience, speaking truth to power, like, really, like I trust you implicitly, and because you do your research, you roll your sleeves up, you really do your work, and still to come out of it with so much resistance from people. These systems that are created are super strong and deep, and like, they're very ingrained. And actually, I remember one call early on in COVID. I mean, if I'm honest, COVID caught me with my pants down, like, because I don't know. I'm like, fuck, I don't know. Like, I knew instinctively that this whole vaccine, nah, I'm not getting that at all. And it brought up a lot of stuff for me that I hadn't ever really voiced or vocalized around big pharma and government. I knew there was just so much bullshit going into it, but I don't want to get off on a thing other than to say that I know that was going on, because guess what? As within, so without. I know that I can be exactly the very things that I project about and judge people for is me as well. But I think you have, what I'm saying is, I think you had enormous integrity to just keep going what you were doing. I just didn't, and I still don't. And this is something, not topic maybe for another day, or maybe we'll get somewhere in this, is like, I don't have the capacity for doing the kind of work that you've done, and my partner as well, and a few other people that I meet. I find it unbelievably disorientating, fearful, actually, because it's like, fuck, what do I believe? I mean, even, there are people who believe that the earth is flat, and there are people who believe it's round, and there are people who believe in the space landings, and there are people who don't. And like, fuck, I mean, you've always said, do your research, do your research, do your research. But like, how long does one continue doing your research on? I think my observation of you is you've got, I know you, I've tested you, and you know your shit, and 80% of it, but you're never going to know the full 100% of it, because there's so much smoke and mirrors and all of that kind of stuff. So coming back to your question to me about the world, there's what you see is not what you get. I think the agendas that are going on. I mean, at the moment, Middle East, Tehran, breakup of love partnership between Trump and Musk. It's probably not even that. It's probably like that over here, distraction, distraction, distraction. What is actually going on over here, right? I mean, God knows. So I think for me, the most honest thing, and the thing I get my center from, is what I can control. Meditation, exercise, authentic conversations, doing the work as best I can. But even as I say that, I feel weak. I feel a fraud. I feel like I should be I should roll my sleeves up and get more with reality, but I get so overwhelmed by it. I almost can't, I just can't deal with it. And I think, why? I think there's so much that we don't know. I mean, there are, ages of human beings or aliens, and like, I mean, who knows what, like centuries and millennia that we don't even know so there's so much we don't know. So I try and bring the locus of control as much as I can back to myself, but also not being deluded, as following the mainstream media. Okay, well, that's what's happening. Okay, trying to challenge things and buck up against things, but it's really hard. It's really hard being human sometimes as well.
Yeah, well, I can. Well, yes and no. Like everything, it is really hard, and it doesn't have to be. You know,
Yes.
and I think it depends how attached we are, how much we resist, how hard it is as well. Because you can do something that takes something, but it doesn't have to be hard. If you know what I mean. And
Yeah.
sometimes it is unbearable. I mean, I I I remember going to visit one of my cousins here in Cyprus when I first got here, which would have been beginning of 2021. And I'd say, look, don't take the vaccines, and don't take these injections. And I don't want to make this show about this stuff, but the point is like, and he said, I'm going to take the next one, and then when the next one comes, I'm going to take that one, and then when the next one comes, I'm going to take that one as well. And I was so disheartened. I was like, why? And then I've just thought, do you know, there's a line sometimes I take with clients, and I kind of have to remind myself, well, it's their business. I have to remind myself it's their business, not my business. I'm paid or instructed or engaged to do and give the best possible input I can and share from my experience. And also, hopefully, I work with clients that stretch me a bit so I'm learning something new. And I think that's always special. But at the end of the day, there's this thing of free will and consequentialism. And at the end of the day, you either reap what you sow, or the consequences of your actions will come back, and
Yeah.
that will give you the feedback. Sometimes they call it karma. There's all sorts of ways of looking at that, but it's essentially you are on that. We or you are on that journey, and part of that journey is to work it out along the way. It's the journey, isn't it? Not the destinations we've often heard. And I think why I think this is important now, especially more than ever, because I think a lot of my business fundamentals were set by the 80s and 90s. And it was, I was talking about this with my last guest as well. And it's like, it's go with the flow, go make money, attain material goods, la 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 la. We're worried about what's going on in Gaza or what's going on in Iran and Israel right now, or in Ireland. What's it got to do with you? Go get another car, bigger house, blah blah blah. And I think that, and it's probably because of our age, because of how long we've been on the planet, and it does take time to kind of start to understand some of the fundamentals, is what is going on globally is affecting us all at a level, and I think the mainstream media, the online, the internet has brought information that we would never have been privy to, maybe even 50 years ago. We would never. Very
Yeah.
extraordinary people have had any kind of inkling about, people have probably not left their villages. They probably married a person they grew up with, in a school. They seasonal living. They went through the seasons, and now it's like everything everywhere. And somehow inside of all of that complexity, that massive data as they call it, you have got to somehow do enough research to fundamentally feel happy about how you see the world. Wow. And that's tough. That's tough because people say, "Oh, so what do you believe in then?" And I've been saying this since I was 14. It's not about what I believe in. It's where do the facts point for me as I understand them, and what are my conclusions? And that can change at any moment because the facts as I perceive them can change, and what there is to do next will change. And I think more now than ever, businesses need to be aware of what's going on. I remember maybe 9, 10 years ago, I was encouraging businesses to have innovations and technology strategy, like SME businesses. I know there's business out there with innovation and technology strategies. They're in those industries, but normal smaller businesses aren't thinking about AI and robotics and computers and processing power. They're probably cutting hair, doing the end of year accounts, or fixing cars or building an extension. What's all that got to do with little old me? Well, if you're not aware of what's going on globally, it will be visiting on little old you at some point, whether it's central bank digital currencies or get in line for this latest injection, or whether it's whatever it might be. ULEZ, for example, and ULEZ in the UK is a moneyed system for using the roads in your local areas. Get paying money to drive your car. So it is affecting us. And all those constraints are affecting people's businesses. A lot of businesses, I hear people say it's got a lot worse since COVID, and then they say it's got a lot worse since for the UK, we left Europe. It's got a lot worse since. So if you look at the cost of living are going up, wages are pretty static. So if you're going to generate your own income or be responsible, you've got to really get on your A game. You've got part of why I want to do these podcasts is that in here there are some gems, and we can maybe flatten the learning curve for people to take value and think, well, where am I not achieving what I could in my business and life due to fear or lack of courage? What would I have to overcome?
Yeah.
And how? What?
Yeah. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Yeah. You spoke earlier on about fear and courage, and you said to me, God, you couldn't do that on the bus, but also, I think courage is, we see it in others. If I go, I think that was a really courageous thing that you just did there, Erkan. You'd be like, yeah, or yeah, it was, or I don't know. But it's for me to see it. If I say to you and the audience, I'm really courageous, So,
You can't share a story where you kind of go, I was shitting myself and I got it done anyway, and then people go, wow, you overcame something. But that's
yeah.
the opposite.
No, that's a very different. That's an authentic story. Like there's a great storytelling distinction. I think her name is Lisa Nichols. She's written a good number of books, and she talks about the dip theory. So what you do, if you're doing a talk, for example, you'd be like, Erkan, here's who he is, this is what he's done, this is his credentials, and this is where he's going, and this is what he's wanting to achieve. And typically go hear a talk with Erkan, and he tells you about his story, and it's like, okay, it's kind of interesting. But when Erkan takes you into the dip, the dark nights of the soul, I really fucked that one up, or or I didn't have a clue, but I made it work anyway, and I stumbled across that's the juice. That's what people want, which is the authentic, unflavored, unfiltered realness that I think really bonds us as human beings. But my question I wanted to ask you is, business bold, and I do see you as a bold person. I think it's a beautifully named podcast. I think you are bold. A lot of what you've done. What's the missing for you? What's your next bold move? What are you holding back on, kind of maybe waiting to see what happens?
I think part of why I've chosen to restart the show is to work out some of that by inviting people on and listening to what I'm saying now. That may, because I said to people that I'm going to start a new podcast with new ideas, is I want to, if you like, evolve those and formulate those ideas by testing these conversations, by coming out and thinking like, well, these are the things on my mind. And I think, yeah, I'm not on a crusade anymore. I wouldn't describe myself as an active activist. And it was a friend of mine a while back, about just over 2 years ago. I asked her, so what are you doing around your activism now? She goes, I've retired that now. It's just me, my husband, and my dog and my home. And I thought, you can retire activism, like hang your gloves up. You know what I mean? And I thought, yeah, you know what? It's a bit like a soldier being away at war, something you probably know more about than I do about being a soldier. But you come back and you hang up you hang up the tools of the trade and you say, that's it, I've done my bit, I've made my contribution. And I think where I'm at now is I want to focus on my personal wealth, financial stability. If you spent 30 years making a difference, and I think Buckminster Fuller said something along the lines of, you've got to work out early on whether you want to make money or make a difference. And I liked money. I've always liked nice things, and I always wanted to have great experiences, and I've had them. But I've never created the kind of wealth that I think I can quite easily achieve, because my focus was on experiences, i.e., for example, for the audience, is I love going on track days, taking my car, going around a racetrack, going on driving holidays, eating in nice restaurants. So travel, things like that, like having those experiences. So you bag those. You once you've bagged those, or those scores are on the doors, they're not going anywhere. You've got them. And then paralleled with that is not the accumulation of money and creating personal wealth or financial independence. Was my currency was contributing to the human experience, to encourage people to understand the nature of the game if we want to overcome poverty. One thing I share in the Be Inspired program is that, why are there wars, why is there disease, why is there famine, why is there debt? And after doing a considerable amount of research back in 2003 for that era, I came to the conclusion because it's by design. Because I believe overwhelmingly there's more than enough of everything for everyone. There's an abundance. In fact, there's a book that I'd like to mention, Jill Tiny, that when we worked on Big Collaboration together, she wrote a book, and on the front of the cover it says, from fear, scarcity, and competition to love, connection, and abundance. And I think we live in a paradigm of fear, scarcity, and competition. And what we need to do is transform as individuals to one of love, connection, and abundance. And how we do that is through authenticity. It is through sharing ourselves. It is through, I think we identified in the first podcast, is connection. Is that we are all infinitely connected on many, many levels, and levels I'm sure there's still levels that we've got no idea about, and I think kind of go forth and live the best life you can live for you. You don't have to please you, and that's the journey I'm on now. And I think where that might lead to, I'm meeting new people here in Cyprus that I could probably design and deliver courses with, work with more businesses, create more training, and just by be the person you want to be. I know this is kind of cliche and it's obvious, but if I'm interested and interesting, and I live at my best level of inspiration, inspiring others and communicating and creating a vision for people to step into around action, it shall be. Then why not?
Yeah.
I think that's why I wanted to do the program, and I didn't want it to be just a straight. That's why it's bold in business and life, because I think that people say to me, "Oh, you're a business coach, not a life coach." So it's all life and it's all business.
Yeah.
Whether you work at Sainsbury's, or not to put anyone down for working in Sainsbury's, I don't mean like that, but whether you're an employed type of, you're an employee in a company, or you run a small business, or you're in corporate somewhere, at the end of the day, we have what we could call our public business life, and we have our personal private life, and they are linked. And if you look at any business, it's really a collection of people, some products or service, and a bunch of other people who are the customers. Simplified, it's people. So, and people is who you are when you're communicating. People is who you are when you're being a leader or a manager, or an employee, or a business owner. So I think the more we are able to transform and improve our own game, we play the game at another level. And then, at the end of the 80 years, 90 years, game over, you start again. Who knows there's friends and people I know that are quite adamant they know what happens next. I'm not sure about what happens next, but I'm sure there is a next something.
Yeah.
Whether we reincarnate or we come back as, I don't know, squirrel or whatever it is, there's got to be something there. And I think, I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I kind of. There was a bit extra, which is all good. It's just the nature of a conversation. As you were speaking, I was thinking about and it's kind of topical for me at the moment. I'm reading a really, really good book. I can't remember the name of the author. It's called On Being a Man.
Sam Ke
And say again.
Sam Keen.
No, you actually gave me that. That was called Fire in the Belly, On
Yeah,
Being a
on being a
Man.
man. Yeah. So
You gave me that.
it's just called on being. Oh, I gave you that, but yeah. So it's not that one. It's just being a man.
Yeah, I'll send it through to you. And the guy, he's a psychotherapist, I think, but writes so well, you know. And I part of a men's group which I facilitated last night. There were eight of us, seven of us, and we did it on shame. And you know, one of the things that he was saying, the opening line of this guy's book, it talks a lot about relationships, sex, fatherhood, from a male perspective, and the opening line of the book is "Be a man" or "Man up." This is the text that we were brought up on, that starts our journey of shame, because what "Be a Man" says is you're not man enough, and there's something wrong with you, you know. So as you were speaking, because it's topical for me, we did this piece last night where we spoke about shame, and each of us gave an experience of shame. And shame is where you just, you know, that experience of shame when you feel like you just want to just shrivel up into the tiniest little ball and just pretend you're not there. And and it was just incredible how every man shared stuff, and it was both funny, tragic, human, and real, you know, and stuff that you know, just stuff around being caught doing this or being busted for that, or and it was just, my point is, why I'm sharing that is I think that, you know, real conversations, authentic, vulnerable, honest conversations is where, in I think in many ways the transformation happens. And I wonder for you in your work with your clients, like, is that important to you? Not good or bad, right or wrong, but like, do those conversations feature? Because I don't have the picture with me, but I've got a picture of a smiling guy, and it's a sketch, and then in the back of his brain is a little boy, and he's sucking his thumb, and he's holding a little teddy bear, you know. So he's got this like, come on, let's do it, you know. And the back guy's, yeah, we're gonna do it, you know. Is that something you do in your work? Is it something you see in your clients? I'm curious. And are many of them men, for example?
I think a lot of men. I mean, overwhelmingly, I've worked with male business owners of
Mm.
a certain age, sort of like middle, like 40s, 50s,
Yeah.
late 30s, that kind of age. Men who've been in business a while. They got to a point where they kind of, I wrote a book called Sail by Date. It's a play on words like sell by date. When are you going to sail off into the sunset? And I wrote this book about 10 years ago, and it was about how, as entrepreneurs, male entrepreneurs, we're quite driven, we're passionate, we put years of effort in, and this was about successful business owners. It's kind of get to a point where the world has changed, they've changed, they're not as indestructible as they used to be. They can't drink and stay up as late as they did. They're more vulnerable. They probably had an illness of some sort, or maybe starting to see that they're business is not as relevant as it used to be 15 years ago. And it's a scary place because they're starting to become more aware of their frailty, their vulnerability. Maybe they've been through a divorce. It's a tough one. And I saw something that really kind of, as a father and as a man, as we both are father to two daughters, and we won't go into that in this show, but it's like I saw this thing that said in this paradigm now, fathers are optional. A lot of children are being brought up by one parent female households, and I think that's doing a lot of damage. And I think even terms like toxic masculinity and what is a man other than just supply money, and there's a really, is it James Sexton? There's this lawyer that I see talking, is an American lawyer, and he does a lot of prenups and things like that. And I apologize if I got his name wrong. But he said something like, if you look at everything a man promises in a marriage, protection, money, and all those kind of things, and a woman provides a home, sex, food, care of, In fact, when the marriage breaks down, the man still has to pretty much carry on providing all of that, and the woman doesn't have to provide any of that for him, you know? And it's kind of it's through the courts, through the way divorce works. We are seeing, I think, a systematic destruction of the male alpha, not just alpha male, but the male masculine spirit is under attack, you know. And I think there's a confusion for women in that. They don't know that they don't have to. It's like we're all losing what the roles are.
Yeah, no one's benefiting, right?
No, because it's divide and, I mean, in my opinion, it's divide and conquer. It's putting man against woman, man against. I mean, with all the gender variables now, you know, there's just so many opportunities to divide and conquer and put us at odds with each other. And I think one of the things I'd like to see in this show is we find where the innate, natural commonalities are between men, between man and woman, between women and women. You know, why are we competing all the time? And if you look at the book title, Fear, Scarcity, Competition, well, you covered fear earlier and courage. Scarcity, there's not enough, and competition, you better get going, otherwise you're going to lose out. You know, to one of love, which we I think we covered that. Well, not covered it, but we kind of touched on it. Love, connection, and abundance. You know, like when we reach that higher level of consciousness where we're kind of infinitely connected and there's more than enough to go around, you can let people out in traffic. You don't have to jump the queue when people are trying to get to the whatever they're trying to get to. And I think that is something that I just think the day-to-day experience of what it is to be a man, to live your life true to yourself, to thine own self be true, is really important. And I get today I get accused sometimes of being difficult, and there's people who know me that will go, yeah, you are difficult, but I'm difficult because you are not standing for anything.
Mm.
If you stand for something, you say, look, if you know, you stand for something and you stand for integrity, and you know, standing for integrity doesn't mean your integrity is always in. That's
Correct.
the other confusion bit. You know, it's like, no, for human beings, integrity is always going out. And we've heard that before, right? So you manage integrity, but at least be a stand for it. You don't go, yeah, but you were late yesterday. But I'm saying, let's be on, you know, once heard one of my mentors say, you can be knee deep in poo and still be a stand for something. You know, what are we a stand for? And I think that's one of the things I want to see in the show. Though you are a business owner, what are you really a stand for? Is it another Rolex on a holiday in a gated property? Is it another Porsche? Is it really, are you just exploiting your workforce? Or are you doing something? And the book, Sale by Date, was about mature, successful business owners asking what's next. And I was saying, well, how about you leave a legacy and empower the next generation and come out smelling of roses? Like, make it pay you to be an awesome leader and hand over the business to the next generation and still provide all your knowledge and understanding, because the world is changing, and not everything, you know, like if you hold a certain point of view too long, it will no longer be relevant.
Yeah.
And how quickly do things move on now?
Yeah.
I mean, mate, we're getting close to 60, right? How much has the world changed in the last period, you know, 10, 20 years? Incredible amount. And what's AI going to do to our lives and our businesses? And you know, I remember not long ago showing people a video about AI and what was going to happen. This was quite a while ago. And they were saying they're going to be replacing artists, they're going to be replacing accountants, they're going to be replacing doctors. So all this machine technology and processing power is almost making us obsolete. You know, it's almost like that we're becoming what's the by natural selection, you know, evolution by natural selection. AI is gonna spank our asses. And where AI cannot complete is in the natural world, as in when you walk out in nature and you want to live life and you want to, you know, it is holding you in a place where the technology is got you, whether that's through digital central bank digital currency, as an example. So if you grow your own food and you can generate your own power and you have some water, you don't have to play that game.
Yeah.
If you're aware why that's an important thing, what I've just said. Otherwise, you're not playing the game, you are in the game, and you don't know that you don't know that you're in it.
Yeah, I think that the biggest threat to our species is AI. And that's both. It's not an original thought because there's a guy called Mo Gawdat who you may have come across, who was head of Google X, and he's been prolific with podcasts and stuff. And he wrote a book called Scary Smart, which was about AI. And the first part is scary. He draws up. It starts the book with your five of us are gathered around a fire in the middle of the desert. And are we there because we're on a weekend away, or are we there because the machines have put us there? And the first part of the book is called Scary, which is like, wake up, people. This exponential increase in artificial intelligence and so on and so forth. We're now starting to say, I've noticed in the rhetoric, we're moving from, jobs could be taken, accountants' jobs and other kind of data jobs, and now it's moving into plumbers and electricians and coaches and psychotherapists. It's like, fuck. I mean, this thing is just accelerating, just through the. Anyway, the point being that I think, what do we do about that? And I think it comes down to where the machines will catch up with us last is in authentic conversations and connections and as you say, growing your own food and living the dream of life, which is a life that is based on the soil and the connection and the spirit of people.
Yeah, I mean,
I, th- I, th- I
if you think about it over the generations of our awareness of the human experience, is brutal. People have been in wars, diseases, famines, scarcity, like poverty. A majority of human beings on this planet are living in poverty. I mean, you live in Africa, you're probably closer to abject poverty than I've ever been.
yeah, but it's down the road. It's not here.
Down the
I
road,
mean,
yeah. And you've taken me into a couple of places over there. I'm going into Lunga with you, and seeing the way people are living. It's just, and it's incredible. And I'm sure they're still living that way. And there's a lot
yeah,
more.
you wouldn't see much change. In fact, it might be worse.
It might be worse, and I think we've got it so good. I'm talking about a certain Western, more majority of a certain Western experience.
Got a car, got Wi-Fi, got hot water, got a roof over your head, got an extra bedroom. That's us in the top probably 2% of people are the wealthiest people on the planet.
And that's what I say to business. I mean, and you're already in the top whatever percentage of the human experience. Where do you think you're going to go from here? What do you think? The Porsche is going to make you happier? The Rolex, the gated, what is it what you really desire? And that's what the sell by date book was about. It's like, really, what is your life about? And you are not your business. You are not your results. There's something beyond that. And I know that's quite maybe a little bit of a heady statement, but you are beyond your circumstances. And who is that person? And I think that's why I like the word bold, and I like it because it's a four-letter word, and I like it because not many people use it because there's that. But it's like, what is it to be bold? What is it to bold? Could be just letting someone out in traffic where you normally wouldn't. Bold could be saying what there is to say when no one else is saying it.
You gave me a great bold story the other day, and I want you to just revisit that because it was so good. I told a couple of people, and they were like, "Wow." And I want to ask you also. Second question I want to ask is, what is your bold move? You don't have to know what the bold move is, but what would you like your next bold move to be? So that's the second question. The first question is, you told me that story of getting that job in sales. And you told me two stories, but the one I particularly remember was the interview, and they said, "Why should we give you the job?" That one.
Yeah, yeah, I think I know. And I said to him, when you meet me, you'll know. He goes, "Great, you got the job you're in."
But it was bold and it was confident and that stuff, people buy that stuff. I mean, they
But
bought you and
I think
yeah.
that's something that's I want to. I mean, I want to dine out on this a little bit if my audience will grace me. His personality goes a long way, and I think if we're going to spend all our time looking inside devices and hooked up like 8 inches from our face, where are we? Who are we? it's getting sucked out of us, And I think personality, not everybody has to like you. What I think it's just about what will they think of you is like one of the big things about getting up in front of people. And I love there's a Werner speech called the world's best ever speech by Werner Erhard, who was the guy who devised the landmark forum, right? And he said, "What are going to think about you? Awful things. What did you think they were going to think about you?" And I love that line. Well, if you already know they're going to think awful things, then you're almost like there anyway. And if they do, they do, and they don't, they don't. But what I'm getting at is we are so preoccupied what people think. And I think a lot of shame, what is it to be a man is something I've been going back to. And I'm like, I'm not going to be just a provider. I'm not going to be this Western notion that you can discharge the father and then they just pay money and that's it. We are more than that, and we need to stand our ground. As as an example to being difficult. Because people don't want you to be difficult. They just want you to comply or just give in. And I think, you know what? If you know who you are, be true to yourself and stand your ground, right? And be prepared to take what comes. And that takes courage. That takes being bold. Whether that's being bold enough to promote your business above others, to make a case. I said to people, look, when you go out in the world to make a case for your business, it's like going to court. You're making a case for them and creating an agreement that you're the preferred choice and get the business and then serve the hell out of those clients. Give them an experience. What really sickens me, man, is when I go into a restaurant or a bar or any establishment and the service is just so lackluster and mediocre. And I'm like, mate, you're here. This is your life. And I don't blame it on the staff. I mean, it's not about blame, but what was his name? There was who's the conductor that did that really great TED talk about,
Oh yeah, I know the guy you mean. Art of Possibility.
yeah, art of possibility. Anyway, and he said you can.
Zander,
Yeah,
Benjamin
yeah,
Zander.
Benjamin Sanders. And look, this, I mean, Benjamin Sanders said, you got to look for that shine in the people's eyes, that they're alive and they're inspired. And for me, the Be Inspired program was all about identifying three main pillars of what takes inspiration and genius out of our lives, because we all have genius. We're all life force of the universe with manual dexterity mate, I'm losing the names of a lot of people. The other lady who did the stroke of genius, Jill Bolte Taylor, right? And she said, we're the life force of the universe. And it's like, do you remember there was like a space program, and he used to say, "So brain the size of a planet," and they asked me to pick up a piece of paper. I don't know, I don't know which space, whatever it was, right? And like, you are the life force of the universe, and you're not doing justice to who you are. And I'm sure I'm not, right? So what would that look like? Who would you be to be the life force of the fucking universe? What's that? As Benjamin Zander, how would you walk? How would you talk? Who would you, what would that look like? I guess that's what I want to remind myself of. Like, that's what I want to discover by doing these podcasts is I'm probably doing it as much for me as anyone else. I want to get as much value out of this as I can, because I'm not doing it because I've got fuck all else to do, right? I'm doing it because I want to find what is the bit that I'm missing at the moment. What is it? What is the conversation? I think I've got a good handle on a lot of subjects, but what is the expression of that, and where do we direct it? Where do you direct your passion, your life force of the fucking universe?
Wow. I mean, as without, so within, brain the size of a planet. Yeah. I mean, are there planets with that size? Yeah, absolutely. Like there are gazillions of them, but I really got like, we have, that whole thing. And I'm reminded, like when I was saying, when I did those speeches on the bus and so on, you stand, you breathe, you look around, I get into my body this wisdom, and you've had it. Many of the listeners have had it, where this just stuff comes out, and you're looking and going,
Listen, man, I love the line about, one truth can outweigh 1,000 lies. One little spark of light can take away the darkness, and good is so much more powerful and condensed and valuable than anything evil. You know, and what I like about what I like is this line about the seeds of the evil carries the seeds of its own destruction. You know, so all the things that are there being plotted and planning against us, and all the things that are happening, we are way, you know, like the consciousness that I have in my little head is bigger than all of the AI on the planet. It is bigger because it is. You know, and I think we don't live like that. We don't behave like that. We feel like, oh, that's going to come along and take our jobs, and that's going to come along and do this, and I don't feel good enough. And you know, and I had some thoughts about, really, should I be doing a podcast again? And what do I really want to do? And I'm like, you know what? I don't know, but I trust me. I trust my guests, and we're going to come up with something that creates value. If no one else gets value out of this, you and I do.
Correct. Well, I mean, the nugget that I'm taking away at this point in the conversation is the brain as big as a planet, and how, you know, the default mode network is that part of the brain that, you know, that just the repetitive, you know, I'm not good enough, I'm a failure, I'll never make it, like that stuff which we drill and drill and drill, and I drill and drill and drill.
But no,
You
but
know,
also, Si, this is the point, going back to the three pillars of the Be Inspired, is education did that to you. The money system does that to you as well, and so does the media. Because whatever you own ain't good enough. Your girlfriend's not good enough. Your car's not good enough. Your kids are not good enough. Your body's not good enough. That's the media, definitely. All right. The money, you've never got enough money. There's always more money. There's always more money. You want to buy more stuff and buy blah, blah, blah. And then the education system is designed to fail the majority of the participants. It's what it's designed for.
yeah.
It's the purpose of schooling. I mean, we'll go into that on another program. But, you know, so it's not just you're doing it to yourself. It's been done to you. We are victims of abuse to an extent. Now, I'm not
Yeah.
saying stay a victim, but at least if you understand what's been done to you, and I guess the personal development market did address some of those issues, but I think the conspiracy world did more. The occulted knowledge is starting to understand what education really stands for. Oh, sorry, mate, that's a schoolboy error.
That's fine. So I like errors. They show you human. Keep it in. Don't bother with wasting another 2 hours on editing. Just keep it in. I'll keep talking. You keep fiddling. You know that I met this woman who may become a client of mine. She's a former Olympic swimmer. Well, she just failed to get into the Olympics. She dedicated 6 years of her life. You know, one of those. God, how do they do it? And there was a real breakdown, and now she does performance coaching and stuff. And she said something, yeah, youngster. I mean, by my standards, she's 30 years old, and she was saying, you know, what's really working for her is getting onto stuff. Like there'll be an opportunity, like, hey, do you want to meet for a coffee? Yeah, let's meet for a coffee. Don't know who you are exactly. You're not quite in my kind of business, you know, thing. But let's meet for a coffee. And I really got what she was saying, because often I'll be like, maybe it's not really my ideal client, for example. But what I'm noticing, and you know, it's something you helped me with when in the early days of coaching, was, you know, energy in, energy out. You know, what you put your attention on grows. You know, and I've been quite lost, frankly, in terms of focus in the last kind of 8, 9, whatever months. My whole naked speaker thing, which is a whole story for another day. But really, just wanting to bring authenticity, all the things that we care about, authenticity, courage, and so on and so forth. But what I got from what she said is what I've been doing for the last 2 weeks is just picking up the phone, and you said this to me as well, past clients, people I'm curious about, sending WhatsApp, hey, do you want to meet for a coffee? Now, there's one side of me that goes, oh, another coffee. But if I look at the numbers now, they're not all converting into business, but 80% of them are converting into business. Why? Because I give a shit, right? Like, let's meet for a coffee with no expectations. Tell me what you're up to. I'll tell you what I'm up to. And then, you know, you keep your ears on and you ask, how can I help? What help do you need? Oh, I'm struggling with sales, or my boss is this. Can I help? Well, let's do this. I'll give you a free session. And it's like, suddenly I've gone from like, oh, to, I just want to offer.
Listen, I need to wrap it up, because believe it or not, we've been going for nearly an hour and 20. Or I am 15, I can't remember. Anyway, so I was planning these shows to be about 45 minutes, and I'm not restricting it unless there's a reason to. But listen, I really want to thank you for coming on, Si. This is the second in the podcast. I think it's helped me no end in terms of starting to evolve whatever this is going to be. And I think it's a guest driven evolution, and the dynamic of myself, and possibly I'd like to do maybe a couple of shows or a few shows where there's maybe two, three, four of us, having a conversation about, I don't know, whatever the topic might be. Any last things you'd like to say to our audience?
Yeah, and I think to you as well, like what you're doing with these podcasts is doing the podcast. You've got a million reasons not to do it. They're not earning you money yet. They may do in the future, who knows what. But you're not doing it for that reason. You're throwing your hat over the wall, and you'll be like, oh, but it's a beautiful thing that you're doing, and I really encourage you to keep going. You're gaining insights, the guests are gaining insights, the listeners are gaining insights, and you're acting on it, as as the saying goes. It was from Hemingway, I think, who said, the every first draft is shit. Every first podcast is shit when you look back on it, but you're doing it, and that is bang, right?
Yeah,
So
it's not
so
my
that's
first.
what I
It's not my
say
first.
again.
It's not my first. I hope it's not that shit.
No, I know
But you
the
were all
first
right,
one
mate.
was
Don't be so hard on
this is
yourself.
this is just less shit.
Less shit than the other ones. So listen.
You're
So
moving from this into
I want to
reality.
I want to thank you. I'd like you to be a regular on this. I think we'll maybe have you on every month or two or whatever we want
Lovely.
to. I really appreciate your time. If you want to check out Si Ekin, I'll put his links at the bottom of this video. Check him out. Get in touch if you're South Africa or wherever you are. You're looking for an outstanding coach that basically works with integrity, inspires. And he's not a bad looking dude either. Look at him; he's a lovely looking guy. I want to say thank you for listening to this and watching it, and please share it. I mean, really, share it, like it, and pose myself questions to ask my guests. Yeah, feel free to contribute, feel part of it, and I want to thank you, Si, and thank you for the audience for being with us. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Beautiful.
And cut.
Great. How was that?
Yeah, perfect. Perfect.